Hi, let's today talk about a limited liability company or an LLC. This is a company structure where the owners are not personally liable for the company's debts or liabilities. So limited liability companies are hybrid entities, so they combine the characteristics of a corporation with the characteristics of a partnership or a sole proprietor. So kind of the best of both worlds. Now, before we go on to a little bit more about what LLCs are, let's talk a little bit about what you might also have to form. Now, there is another title called professional liability company, and many states require you to form a professional limited liability company because they want to make sure that the public knows that you're a licensed professional. Now, not all states require this, but some do. So if you have a license as a therapist or a doctor or a lawyer or a chiropractor, you might be required to fill out a Pllc. Now, a Pllc and an LLC are still a corporate hybrid. They're an entity, and really the designation of the P is really the only difference between the two types of organizations. Second of all, just so you know, if you are in California, Alaska, Georgia, or Hawaii, you are unable to set up an LLC or a Pllc because the states just simply won't allow it. In California, they want you to form a professional corporation. So in the states that are allowed to do that, I'll give you a little more information. But if you're in one of those other states, turn this off, go to another thing, find something else to do today. So, what is the hybrid piece of this, and what does that mean? So when you're looking at a corporation pays taxes on the business itself. But an LLC doesn't pay taxes on itself. It uses its profit and loss, and it passes through the taxation to your personal income tax, very much like a sole proprietor or a general partnership. The business doesn't pay taxes like a corporation, and a corporation's tax are usually taxed at slightly higher tax rates. And if you don't make a certain amount of profit, you still have to pay a minimum amount of tax as a corporation. Where an LLC, you don't have to do that. You would just pay if you made an income on what your personal and your business would be together. The other thing about a LLC that's different in the corporation field is that you don't have to issue stock, you don't have to have an annual meeting, you don't have to have written notes that you must keep, and there's not a lot of additional paperwork. It's not as expensive to file an LLC as it would be for a corporation. So an LLC, though, does have an opportunity if they choose to be taxed as a corporation. And again, you'll have to talk to your CPA if that might be an advantage to you or not. It would depend on your personal income taxes. There's a bunch of other little features, but it has that ability. So again, it can kind of walk between a sole proprietor and a corporation and be kind of its own little entity and still potentially save you some money. Now, in order to create an LLC or a Pllc, you also must file documents with the state. That includes the articles of an organization, which would include who are the business owners, what you're required to do, your home addresses, your EIN numbers, some other kinds of information is required. And then you have to pay all the fees and regulatory pieces. The other issue is, though, you still need a business name, and in each state, the business name will require you to write out some different abbreviation or complete name of the LLC. So again, check that list that I have of each of the states on what is required for your particular state on how you choose your business name and how you use either a PLCC designation or an LLC designation. You also need a business license or a permit, and you may, as an LLC, have to pay a franchise tax. But again, those are individual based on states. Overall, though, the fees are lower and the paperwork is much less than creating a corporation. A little bit more than maybe a sole proprietor, but you have that limited liability of all the debts and assets. Now, if there's fraud in your business, or if you do not adhere to standard accounting procedures or bookkeeping procedures, the state can come after you for your personal assets in order to resolve the business assets. So make sure that you still are doing everything according to the up and up, and make sure that you are filing the documents that you need to, and you are keeping your accounting in order. So the best thing about creating an LLC or a Pllc is that it's simple. It protects you from liability of bankruptcy or lawsuits that potentially could be filed for you. But you also need to file one other piece of paper, which is the continuation agreement. And a continuation agreement for an LLC is if you have more than one partner, then if you die, then the company doesn't typically just move over to the other partner. So you need this document, this business continuation agreement, on where your piece of it goes to. Otherwise, your business partners will have to dissolve your company and start a new company, which could cause a lot of additional problems, and they may not get the same name. So I hope that that gives you a little bit better of an understanding of what an LLC or a Pllc is and how it might help your business, and it might be a way to protect yourself as you create your wealth. Okay, take care.